Hi, I'm Phil Lollar, and you're listening to the Tim and Josh Show.
Phil, this is Josh.
Hi, Josh. You were in the car the
Hi,
last time or something, I think.
Yeah,
something like that.
way to a game or something
Yeah.
along those lines. But
Oh, that's right. It was the Broncos game.
okay, since last time we talked, book six of the Black
Yes.
Chronicles has come out. I knew it was going to be good when I saw a three-part prologue. I was like, oh my goodness.
They're in the prologues. It's been so long since I've seen the book, I've forgotten.
Really? You got one with Nicholas
Oh,
Adamsworth,
Nicholas Adamsworth. Okay, I do kind of
yeah,
remember that.
Philip Glossman, and Philby and Blackgaard
Oh,
talking?
right, right, right,
Yeah.
right, 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 right. Yeah. I had to fill in some holes in the original plotting and the original stuff because we didn't have time to talk about that on the show. I wanted to, how did Blackard become the European security guy and all that sort of stuff
Yeah.
had to be taken care of. And because we just didn't have time, I just didn't have time to explain it in the episodes. And then the Nicky Adamsworth thing is setting up other things that happen in later books. So other things that are going to be revealed in book seven, book eight, and one of the good things of this is I just finished book nine earlier this week. Just submitted it to Larry
Oh,
Whedon at Focus on the Family and the publishing.
what is the origin of evil Nicholas Adamsworth? Because he comes in such like a likable way, and then we see
Yeah,
him in the Power
yeah,
episode being turning a little south. Because I know there in the web comics there was the web comics they had where they
yeah,
had
yeah.
Adamsworth as the predecessor.
He's the
What came first?
acolyte. Yeah.
Yes, yes. What was that based off like the Blackgaard Chronicles to come, or
It was kind of mutual. Evan David, he was mainly he's the mover and shaker behind the cartoon, the comic book. So he was the mover and shaker behind that, and I was in the middle of working on all of this stuff while he was doing that. And I said, okay, I need to know what you're doing here. I need to know what's going on so that we can make sure we're not overlapping each other and we're not contradicting each other because
Mhm.
that has been a huge problem throughout the entire
Yeah.
history of Adventures in Odyssey. This writer's doing this writer's doing this, and suddenly they realize, oh, wait a minute, we've just contradicted each other. So,
right.
and so I said to him, I just need to know what you're doing. And so he's told me what he had in mind. He and Marshall Younger and I kind of sat down and we went through it all, and I gave him some suggestions, and he was like, this is where I really want to go with this, and I said, okay, this is fine. I just need to know because I'm dealing with that time period that you're referring to. You're
Mhm.
referring to Nicholas being adopted by Blackgaard.
Mhm.
I'm dealing with that in the Blackford book, so I need to know this. If I don't say anything about this, everybody's going to go, well, wait a minute, hold on, there was
Yeah.
this thing going on here. Well, it ended up working out really well because Nikki helps Blackford in ways that I would have had to explain otherwise. It's very convenient that what we did was in the power in the episode The Power that he does become kind of a bad guy. And I explained that in these books too. I think I explained that in maybe in book six, where he's very bitter about everything that happened because everything seemed to be okay, everything seemed to be going along really well, and then all of a sudden Richard Maxwell comes in and makes him out to be a criminal. The
Mhm.
Nicky is redeemed, sort of. He goes back to the college, but then all of a sudden he's not there anymore because the college stopped the program. And
Right.
now he's back into the foster care system. And so now he's just back and back and back. And so what he's doing in those early chapters is kind of going through all of that and talking about the only times in his life that he's ever been happy and whatnot like that. So like three times. And interestingly enough, there's an episode I'm working on right now for the audio drama that deals with the fallout of that in a very personal way for Whit. It doesn't really have anything to do. He doesn't talk to Nikki or anything like that, but it's the guilt that Whit feels for not really doing what he should have done. He's not really doing right by Nikki. He sort of like left
Mhm.
him to the wind, and of course when he left him to the wind, Blackbeard was right there to scoop him up. So some of the stuff that's happening right now in the on the program, which I won't go into because I don't know how much I can reveal, and I don't really want to get in trouble for revealing stuff that I'm not supposed to reveal. But
Sworn to secrecy.
yeah. Well, it's not that I'm sworn to secrecy. It's just that I know if I say something, I'm notorious for giving things away. I'm notorious for the. I did it with my son. We liked the Harry Potter books when they were coming out, and so I was reading them, and I read far in advance, and then he would read them when he had time. He was reading them, and I would refer to something that happened in book six that he hadn't even gotten to yet. And I'm like, "Oh, dude, what'd you think about blah blah blah?" And he's like, What are you talking about? What? What? Oh, I thought you already read that. I'm sorry. Never mind. Never mind. Forget I said anything. So I'm really trying to be careful here and not give anything away. I will say this: there's a lot of stuff coming up in the episodes that relate to stuff that's going on in these books as well, and there are a lot of changes. There are a lot of adjustments they're being made. Okay,
Mm.
let's put it that way, and decisions and about characters and their futures and what happens with them and whatnot. So all of that is coming up.
You might not be able to answer this one because you said you were sworn to secrecy. Is there any chance we're ever going to see in the audio world adult Nicholas Adamsworth ever? Like hear him?
I don't know about that. Maybe. See, some of the stuff that I have that I'm working on right now, there's an episode I finished the outline for it and I got some pushback on a lot of the stuff that I was doing and it involved Nicholas.
Oh.
Not that he was ever going to be heard, but he was referred to. And that still may play out, just not right now.
Mm.
Mm.
And so there is a possibility of hearing adult Nicholas Adamsworth,
Oh.
maybe. But I can't promise anything. We've got a huge thing that we got to deal with before we're dealing with anything else. I don't think I'm betraying anything by saying it's the chairman arc.
Oh.
We've got a big, huge. We've got a big thing that we got to deal with,
Oh.
and that's going to take a while. So yeah, I don't want to say anything more about that because I don't
Oh.
want to give anything away.
Oh my gosh, you got me
I,
hyped.
I may have just given something away right
Yeah.
there. I think that that's been mentioned before, but I don't know. We'll see.
Before we move off of the Blackgaard books and we
Hmm.
go on to the other questions, what were some of the biggest challenges that you remember of the leap from five to six? Because there's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to like explain what happened.
Yeah.
Tom for mayor. How did you go about realizing, okay, we're going to name not a number next, and we're not doing Tom for mayor and stuff like that?
Well, the reason is because we wanted to stay focused on Blackgaard
Hmm.
really more than anything else. So it's him being manipulated behind, manipulating things. And Tom for Mayor, while it plays into the whole Blackgaard saga, in particular, Tom for Mayor, those episodes don't really have Blackgaard in them. They have Glossman and they have some other things
Mhm.
going on. Yeah, you got to make choices because this is the Blackgaard Chronicles. You don't realize, of course, until you start getting into all of this, how much Blackgaard influences episodes he's not even in. He's not, like I said, Tom for Mayor. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on in other episodes. Edwin Blackgaard moving to town, all of that sort of stuff. That whole situation. I could have done it, but the original mandate was to do 8 books,
Hmm.
and I stretched it to 9, and now I've stretched it to 10. I think that they would probably go for more books like this, but it's like let's get this one finished first, and then
Mhm.
see. I think the books are going to sell a lot more once the whole series is finished.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know, you guys, you can give me some insight on that. There are super fans who want to get everything as it comes out. There are other fans who go, I'm going to wait until the whole thing is done and then just get the whole thing together
Mhm.
into one book. And I can see that. I can see both sides of that. They were they were not happy with me because I didn't get everything finished at one time. I was working on 2 book series at the same time. It's like
Yeah.
never do that, never do that. That's just way too much. But the other thing is, so books 1 through 5 were there, and then like you guys know, there's this long gap. There's this long wait now for books 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I think that while that is frustrating for fans, that it's also helpful for sales because I think books 1 through 5 just whet everybody's appetite. Now, when are you going to finish these things? And so it's a really fine line to walk, between saying getting everybody really excited about something and then just annoying them because you haven't put it out yet. I mean, this is like George R. R. Martin with the last Game of Thrones book. He's like, you'll get it when I'm done with it, and he's like, you're still not done with it. And I'm like, you're going to die before you get this thing finished, dude. So, so and some people are like, there are a couple of people. Patrick Roth, is another one who wrote these really big long novels, like 1,000-page novels, and he's supposed to do another one. He's working on. He's been working on like 10 years, and people are like, and then a lot of people just lost interest.
Mhm.
People grow out of things they don't. So it's a real fine line that you have to walk there. You have to kind of go, okay, wait.
Mhm.
How long can I push this? How long can I push this? But I just wanted it to be right. I wanted the story to be right. I wanted the stuff with Whit to be right and intriguing and like the young Whit books, like everything. I think pretty much everything I write, it's either going to be, oh, that's incredible, or wow, this is a load of junk. What? People are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. So I'm like, okay, well, that's the way it works.
So, transitioning to Young Wit, how far do you and Dave Arnold plan to have Young Wit go? Are we going to see teenage Wit and young adult Whit or
Yeah, I would like to. I would like to. Dave has kind of taken over the books for now. I've
Mhm.
been doing a lot of stuff, and he's taken them over for now. So book six has just come out of for the Young Wit books. He handled that. I had a consultant input basically. He had the story; it was his. I came to look at it. I gave suggestions and stuff like that, but then he took it and ran with it. And I think he's got book seven. I have a whiteboard right here that had. Let me show you my whiteboard.
oh, let's oh,
That's my whiteboard. That's because that was Blackgaard 9.
oh wow.
That was Blackgaard 9. And now it's no longer Blackgaard 9. And when I was erasing it, I'm like, I'm really scared. I hope I got everything on this black because it's going to be gone now. And by the way, whiteboard markers, they become permanent if you leave stuff on there too long. It's almost like you got to
Yep.
scrape it off with a scraper. It's just like
Yep.
I was like, oh man, good grief, how long have I had this on here? Well, it's been the better part of a year that I had it on there, and that's the reason why I was just stuck up there. Well, on the flip side of that board, I have a young Whit novel that's kind of
Oh,
mapped out on the flip side of that board. And so I don't know where that one will appear or if they'll appear. I don't know if they'll want to do it or not, but I have it there. And I'd like to take young Whit. I really love those stories. I've done several of them now on the audio side as well. And I really love, in fact, I think I got one coming up. That's just an incident that happened to Whit and Wilson when they were kids. And then there was another one that I did in the Knox On that had an incident with the young Whit and all of those kids. And then there was just young Whit and the Revolutionary Secret, which I love those because they're so much fun to write. They're so much fun. I love Whit as a kid. So much of Whit is based on my dad. I borrowed so much from my dad's life when he was growing up because he grew up as the same age as Whit, it's the same time period. And he used to tell us stories about his growing up, and they were so I just loved hearing about him at that time period. And I'm sure I romanticized them in my head because this was the Great Depression. It wasn't a happy time. It was a hard time. But man, just the adventure that they had to go through
Mm.
to survive at that point. And I really love that time period. So I'm hoping to go as far as we can with it to tell a lot of stories with it. I would like to go to his teenage years. I
Mm.
think that would be a lot of fun to go with his teenage years too. But you have to remember. So here's my thing about Whit, and Whit is a very tricky character. He's really very tricky, and the reason why is because this is going to sound maybe odd, but he's a super genius. Whit is enormously smart. He's smarter than anybody else in this program
mhm.
that we have introduced as a really smart character in Odyssey. He's off the charts smart. And I don't know if you've known anybody like that. I've known several people like that, and their minds are always working. They're always doing stuff. They may present themselves in a certain way, but inside their head, it's like a circus. It's like it's the man. It's always going. And
Yeah.
that's what I really like about Young Wit. We get to see the starts of that, and then how it blossoms. I also like the steampunk sort of the
Mhm.
steampunk idea of what goes on with the early inventions that we realize, oh no, later on that becomes this thing, you know. When he was a kid, he did this too, and it's like, oh, later on it becomes that thing. So I really like that as well. And then I think there's just a lot of good story to be told around that time period and what's
Mm.
just around the world. I can give you a hint as the book that's on the other side of this whiteboard is it deals with Nazis. It deals with Germany. That was all on the rise at that point. That was all happening right then. And I loved history, and I have a chance to write for characters that I've created in that time period. I'm going to go for it. I mean, I'm going to go like crazy with it. I also really like the idea. One thing that we have done in the Young Wit books, and I think we want to do more of it. I really like doing this too. Is that the people who became icons later, like show business icons and stuff like that? We get to see them when they weren't
Mm.
when they were first starting out. I have a really good friend growing up. He said his parents. Now you may not even know who I'm talking about here, but this just so intrigued me. His parents got to see Red Skelton. You know who Red Skelton was? Red Skelton. They got to see him when he was a nobody
Mm.
on stage practicing like vaudeville. He was just starting out, and they got to see it, and they remembered. You know, they would tell us stories about it. Yeah, he was pretty funny back then, and he did this. He had this rubbery face, and he did a lot of funny stuff and everything. I mean, I would look at that and go, I would if I had a time machine. That's one of the absolute things I would do is to go back and look at the Marx Brothers, for instance, when they were first starting out. What were they like? Who were they? I mean, what do we see any of the genius that they
Mm.
did later on? You know, Jack Benny when he was first starting out, and you know, all of these people who when they were very first, Bob Hope Pope and all these people when they were very first starting out, what were they like? Einstein, who was Einstein when he was a kid? What was it? Thomas Edison. I mean, when Whit is as a kid, they were already established as adults. But we think of them, as these like marble men. We think of them as these people who are so set in stone in our brains and everything that we don't think of them as human anymore. So they become iconic for us. They're just there, but they were still human. I'd like to know how they got started, who started them. I mean, what were their influences when they were kids, and how. I think in Young Wit 5, in the last book, we we meet one of those people when they were first starting out. I don't want to say in case people read it, but
I have read book 5. I'm just trying to remember which one.
he was the law student who was defending Ben Huck. Harold got a hold of him over at I don't know if you know who that is and was.
If it did, it might have gone over my head just because yeah.
Let me put it this way. He was a very famous and notorious president later on in life.
Oh, okay. Man, I need to read it. It's been like 2 years since I've read book 5, so I need to catch.
What I absolutely love doing in books and stories these days is hiding Easter eggs.
Mm.
I love that so much because I want people, when they read them out, they just have a good story. They'll read this and then go, I want to read that again, and then realize, oh, wait a minute, who is that? And be looking for this stuff. I want them to be looking for this. And who is that character? Who is that? And perhaps this is, there's more to it than we realize. There's more to it than we even know. And the covers of the Young Wit books are the inside covers and the back cover of the inside covers. One of my favorite things in the entire book, because it's a map of Providence where Wit grew up, and there are Easter eggs just galore in all of these. I mean, you've got to look at them and see all of these little things. In book 5, there's a code that they have to cipher. They have to decipher in book 5. There's another message that if you decipher the code, you'll get a different message from that code. And it's written on the edges of the map of the map. You have to look and see. There's little teeny edges of the map you can look and see.
Okay, now I'm gonna be whipping out my book later to figure that out. My God.
Yeah, probably have to get a magnifying glass to actually look at it and see it, to be able to look at it. But when you do, you see it, it's right there, and then you have to decipher the code, and then when you do, there's a little message for you.
Is it like the Christmas story one where it's like eat your Lucky Charms or something?
I don't want to say. I'm not going to
Make
tell
sure
you
to
that.
drink your Ovaltine.
But all of the maps in all of the first 5 books, and I think probably this would be the same thing with book 6. But there are all these little Easter eggs that tell the story of what's going on in the book. So you can find little things in the map. You'll find a little thing here that goes, oh, what is that? Why is that? Oh, that relates to this thing in the book. That relates to that thing in the book. And so what I used to do when I was a kid, books would do that when I was a kid too. I would go in, and if I knew this, I would go in and look at everything on the map first. I would look at everything on the map first, and then go, okay, I got this. All right. Now I'm reading the book and I'm going, oh, this is such a good story. I want it to end. Well, it can't end because of that thing in that map has not yet happened in the book. So there's something else going on here. But all the street names are, in homage of all of our actors. Smith Avenue for Hal Smith, and there's Bear for Parley Bear. There's Bear Street, and there's Young Street, and for Alan Young. It's all the real name, Edmiston Avenue, and stuff like that. So they're all in honor of our actors, and we've kind of added to that as we've gone along with all the books and the maps on the books. So it's a lot of fun.
I'm so silly. I thought Providence was an actual town for a little bit when I was reading the book. I was like,
I worked very, very hard to make it seem real. And Providence, I will tell you this, Providence is based on in the maps, if you look, Whit lives on Marigold Avenue. I think it's called Marigold Avenue. Marigold was the town that Providence was based off of. I went through and searched. I searched through all of these maps of towns and little towns in North Carolina, and they kind of find one, and I found that one, and I was like, this is it. This is the one. It's got a railroad going right through the town. It's got this, it's got that. And so I had an overview of it, and I said, okay, I'm going to change a few things here, change a few things there, and now I'm going to take it and put it right between Raleigh and Durham, and that's right where it's supposed to be. And so just wanted to make sure. I mean, there's a river that runs right by it, and then there's all this other stuff. And so, yeah, it's based on, that's the reason I named that street Marigold Street. So
I can tell there's a lot of love that goes into the Young Wit book series.
Yeah.
A lot of work. I don't know about love, but there's a lot of work.
But where does Young Wit rank in terms of all the books that you've written and like the stories? Because I can't help but feel like they're really well done. And so like I feel like it's going to be like
Dave and I both have said once we get them done, we've had so much fun writing them. and I know it's been frustrating for them because I really wanted them to be good, so I missed some deadlines and all this other stuff, and I get that, but I just had so much fun writing them. And when I finished the first one, talking to Dave about it, I said, what's really great about this is as I read through it, this is an adventure I want to go on. I wish something like this would really happen to me. I want to decipher the codes and do all that. I really like that. And then that was kind of the feel that we wanted to make sure all the subsequent books have. We want to suck you in and like, this is an adventure I want to have. I hope I can have an adventure like this one day in my life. And both Dave and I said, I think that this is probably the most fun. It ranks right up there at the top with everything that I've done. I really would look at it. I wanted to do young Whit for a long time. I wanted to do his whole history for the longest time, and it didn't happen for many, many reasons over the years. And then finally it did. And I was so happy when it did. It's like, oh yeah, thank you. There's so much lovely stuff that we can talk about in his early days, and just his relationship with his family and how all of that played out, and who they are, and some of his regrets, and how he learned, and how he became a Christian, and what happened with him, and and all of that stuff. I really, really enjoyed the first 5 books. We had a lot of fun with them, and I think book 6 is going to be is right up there too. Like I said, I didn't have as much to do with book 6, and I don't know if he's got book 7 mapped out, and then this one will be book 8 or whatnot. So I don't know where that's going, but I hope we can continue doing them. I really love them.
I do have a question about young Whit. He has kind of a rough relationship with his father.
The very first time that we heard from his dad and saw anything about his dad on the audio side was when it's played out in the books when his stepmother has an accident and loses her sight. And so we only heard from Harold very sporadically in that episode. We didn't really get a chance their relationship wasn't really developed at that point. It wasn't really that big. And that was prior to him becoming a Christian too. So we really wanted to play out the whole idea of him becoming a Christian, how that worked. And again, he's a very, very intelligent kid, and he has been all of his life. One of the references, I think, in the very first book was when they're unpacking to go inside their house. Emmy, his next door neighbor, looks and sees that he's got a book of a Sherlock Holmes book, and it's signed by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And she said, oh, that's really kind of interesting and everything, because we tried to work out the timeline and everything. And he said, yeah, Johnny met him because he was a big fan of the book. And so Amy was like, okay, well, that's really good. And then I think Fiona, her stepmother, said he read it when he was 4. He read it when he was 4 years old. I mean, that just kind of gives you an idea of who Whit is, what his life is like. And so because of that, his mind is constantly working. So he has to channel that energy somewhere. And so it just got him in trouble all the time. He didn't mean to get into trouble. I mean, sometimes he did, but most of the time he didn't mean to get into trouble. He was just playing stuff out. He was just doing stuff. He was doing what his mind led him to do. And in that time period, there were some things that you just that the parents were a bit more strict. The parents were a bit more. There's a whole backstory to Harold too. Harold walks with a limp, just like Whit walks with a limp. And the reason why is that Harold was a pilot in World War I. He got shot down, and his leg was badly damaged, and he was rescued by the man who would become his brother-in-law, who was Whit's uncle, who his younger sister Harold married her. That's how that came about. And there's this whole little thing. I had this whole story, but I couldn't fit it in any of the books, and so I was trying to figure out where to put it. I still have that somewhere. I have that, and I really like that too. That's really not, it's the idea of growing through that time period and seeing things happen that were world changing, but that for them didn't seem like it was world changing at the time. So Harold, one of his early memories is that he saw the Wright brothers fly a plane. So he saw one of their early flights, when he was with his dad, and he saw an early, and that's why he wanted to be a pilot. And so it's stuff like that, it's stuff like, wow, this is really amazing stuff that time periods that people lived through were spectacular, and somebody had to see it. If you look at pictures of the Wright brothers in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, they're not alone. It's not just the two of them. There's several people just looking. They just wanted to see what was going on. What's happening over here? Oh, they're looking to fly a plane. What if you could be there? What if you could have seen that? What if you could have, that's incredible to me. I'm like, wow, that is unbelievable, because it changed everything. So think about that. When you think about the fact that in 1912, I guess it was, in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, when the Wright brothers first took off, in 1969, we walked on the moon.
Yeah.
Because of what they started. That's amazing. That's incredible. So when you think about stuff like that, you think about it in terms of the movements of history and the great things and the incredible things that happen in history. So much of that happened right then, right
Mhm.
when Whit was growing up. And one of the reasons why the creation of Harold,
Mhm.
when I created Whit's father, I wanted to make him a university professor at a prestigious university like Duke, is because famous scientists would be going through Duke. He would have an
Hmm.
opportunity to meet them. Famous people, famous scientists are going to be walking through. They're going to be there consulting at Duke, giving lectures at Duke, and then Harold's going to invite them home, and he's going to have and young Whit is going to have an opportunity to talk to the greatest minds of his time. They may be the greatest minds before they were the greatest minds. In other words, they were just coming up too. They were trying to get their ideas out there too. So I look for opportunities like that all the
Mm.
time. One of the things that happens that I hope I can do in this young Whit book that I have planned is Eddie Rickenbacker who is a famous pilot in World War One is one of the guys that helped. Whit gets to meet him. Whit flies in the Hindenburg. Okay, so
Wait.
you look at history, and you see what happened in the history. At this time period, during this time period, the Hindenburg was going back and forth from Germany to to
Oh.
New Jersey all the time. And that summer, the summer that this takes place, it actually set a time record. It was
Mhm.
the fastest crossing that anybody had had up to that time. And I thought, well, why can't Whit be on that one? How come he can't be on there? How can I get him on there?
Oh my gosh.
The famous fight between Joe Louis and Max Schmeling took place right about that time. That was the big fight between a black American and a German, Ubermensch, who was supposed to be able to, and Joe Louis knocked him out. The first fight Louis lost, and the second fight Louis won, and that changed everything too. That changed the way the world looked at African Americans, and all that other stuff was going on. But the 1936 Olympics were right then. That was happening. That was when Jesse Owens was running, showed the world that the Nazis couldn't beat a black man running. He got won the world records. All of that stuff is going on. It's like, how can we miss this? We can't miss this. We got to have. He's there. He's there. Whit is right there in the center of all this. We can't miss this. We have to have him be a part of this stuff. So that's what I think. One of the things I don't think I'm betraying anything in terms of the Texas Centennial
Mhm.
happened in 1936, right when Whit gets out of there.
Right.
He's going to go to the Texas Centennial.
Yeah.
All the great things that happened during his time, he's going to want to be a part of, and we're going to want to make him a part of. So that's what I love about the Young Wit series. I just love it, and I think it's part of me thinks it's necessary because young people don't get that history at all. They don't
Hmm.
understand any of it. If it's not on TikTok, like right now, their history goes back like 4 years. That's
Yeah.
about it. It's just the last
Yeah.
4 years, the last 10 years, maybe. Man, there's all sorts of stuff that went on. That's so fascinating, so interesting, so amazing. And so many of the things that you do right now that you take for granted started then. Computers in their early form were
Yeah.
starting then. All of this stuff was starting then. And now we just take it for granted because we don't even think about it. Television, first thing that was ever televised were the 36 Olympics in Berlin.
Oh.
Hitler was the first guy that you hear on television, see and hear on television broadcast was Adolf Hitler opening the Berlin Games the Berlin Olympic Games.
Oh my
Now it
God.
was very limited. It was just to certain places in Berlin. It's not like it went out worldwide, but the signal went off. This is at the beginning of the movie Contact. If you've ever seen the beginning of the movie Contact, the television signal goes all the way out into the ether. And because time and space are interrelated, they're a function of each other. The further back you go, the further out into space you go, the further back in time you go as far as radio signals are concerned. So the very first signal that went out, can you imagine that? The very first signal that went out into space is Adolf Hitler. Well, if aliens are going by and they're going, we want to meet this Hitler guy, and they come in and they say, well, this is what he did.
Oh,
We had to get rid of him, but this is what he did.
I didn't know that. I didn't know
I
that.
see that's isn't this mind blowing? When you
Yes.
when you start delving into stuff like this and you start
Yeah.
putting into stories, it's mind blowing. It's like,
Hmm.
wow, I had no idea. For instance, I had no idea that there was a pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic in the
Hmm.
1919 that killed 250 million people or something like that. It was an enormously virulent flu thing that makes COVID look like nothing, and because they didn't obviously have the same kind of medicines and everything else that was going on back then. I had no idea that I didn't know at all. But when I found out, I'm like, man, I do want to know about this. What did they do back then? How did they do it? How did they even fight that?
Yeah.
They didn't have vaccinations. They didn't have the medicines that we have now. They didn't have anything like that, you know. And now, of course, we realize we've been manipulated completely with all the vaccines that happened during COVID. So it's like, oh, full circle, things come around, you know.
Yeah.
So, but those are historical anomalies. There's historical things. There's, you know, you never stop to think about. There's a great guy. He's no longer with us. Sir Ken Robinson. He did a TED talk like in 2006. But he talked about education was his thing. He was talking about how do we educate kids? How are we supposed to educate them? But one of the things he mentions in his talk, it's really funny the way he presents it. Is like Shakespeare as a kid. He just, you know, you ever think about that? Shakespeare had a father. Shakespeare had a mother. Shakespeare, this genius of English literature, this genius of everything. You know, he had parents. And he had to go to school. And he had to learn how to write, and he had to learn how to do. What was he like when he was a kid? You know, did he talk like that? Did he, what did he do? You know, what was his grade report at that point? His tutor was saying, you know, needs work on English. I mean, I don't. What would he? Could you imagine that? Because like Einstein didn't. They thought he was a dunce for years because he didn't talk, and then suddenly, you know, he's like the genius of the 20th century. He's like the guy,
Yeah.
and still again iconically, he's a marble man. Iconically, we think of somebody as an Einstein. That's all. That's just the thing that we say about it. So, you know, but who are these people? Who are they? Where do they come from? And what did they do? What shaped their lives? How does that work? And so, same kind of thing happens when we're talking about young Whit. How did he become Whit? What happened to him? And we get to make it up. That's what's really cool. We get to make it up. But how did he become Whit? What happened to him? And so there's a real fun factor in there in saying we pretty much know who the adult guy is that we see that you hear every week and through, you know, 1,000 radio episodes. How do we make up his early life so that it doesn't contradict everything that's going on?
Mm.
How do we point to that without just jumping to it? You know, how did he go through the development? What happened to him, and how did he do all this? And still be true to who he is. It's a lot of fun. It's a whole lot of. I highly recommend it. Jump in. Go ahead and, you know, create your own
Yeah.
characters and do that. I highly recommend it. It's great.
That's why I enjoyed as a kid. I enjoyed the book series Magic Treehouse
Hmm.
because just like what you said, the history in there and
Yeah.
asking those questions,
Yeah.
you're enjoying a good story, but you're also enjoying some good history.
I absolutely love when I'm watching a movie, good film, and somebody gives me a historical fact as a matter of course, when they're just talking. There's a movie called Stand and Deliver. It's with Edward James Olmos. He plays a teacher in high school who teaches advanced calculus to a group of inner city kids, and
Mhm.
nobody thinks he's going to be able to teach them. Well, he's talking to his class, and they're all Latinos. Okay, that's the other Latino inner city kids, and he's talking to them. And at one point, he casually throws in, as he's doing all these mathematical equations on the board, he casually throws in because at one point he has to put a zero, and he casually throws in, "Did you know the Europeans had no concept of zero?" He said, "You know who did have a concept of zero? The Aztecs, the
Hmm.
Incas. They had a concept of zero. They knew what zero was." He said, "Math is in your blood." All their heritage, he's going, "Don't tell me you can't do this. Math is in your blood." The Europeans couldn't do math like this because they had no concept of zero. They didn't think zero was a number. The Aztecs took it and said, "Oh, zero is a number." And I look at that and go, "That's fantastic." That's just, I love it when things like that happen in a film. I love it when film, television, audio show, whatever it is, the people are talking, intelligent people are talking, they're doing something, and as a matter of course, they toss off a historical fact. It's like,
Yeah,
I got to go look that up now. I got to go
yeah,
look. I want to know more about that. I really got to go look that up. That's incredible. That's amazing. And it's really great when it's biblical too.
mhm,
When you have something biblical that goes on, and suddenly, wow, I didn't know the Bible said that. I had
Mhm.
no idea that the Bible said that. Had no idea that, or I've heard that verse all my life and had no idea what it meant. And
Mhm.
now I know what that means. Now I've seen it play out all of a sudden. That's what the imagination station is for. It's
yeah,
exactly what it's for.
Transitioning to a few questions about the audio episodes, if you're down.
Okay.
Maury Rydell and Susie Rydell, what
Uh-huh.
was the inspiration for those characters? Because it kind of came in kind of like a child Blackgaard in some sense. Like, who is this kid?
Well, see, my take on him is a lot different than a lot of folks. This is kind of what has been the back and forth, the tug of war that's been about Maury.
Mhm.
At the beginning, again, if you're familiar with Sherlock Holmes, Maury's name is sort of a play on
Hmm.
Moriarty. And so at the beginning, it was sort of like, well, I was toying around with that and thinking, do we have this kind of kid villain who's a super genius? But then right at that point, also the Benedict Cumberbatch Martin, what is his name? That version of Sherlock Holmes came out, and it was such an interesting take on Sherlock Holmes and how
Hmm.
Sherlock Holmes worked because once again, super genius whose mind is never at rest,
Yeah.
constantly going, constantly going, constantly going. He doesn't take cases that don't interest him. He only takes cases that are super twisty and super because he's got to have something to exercise his mind.
Mm.
And I thought that's really what I want Maury to be. I really want Maury to be that kind of person who is extremely intelligent and but hasn't landed yet as to whether he's going to be an evil genius or use his talents for good.
Mm.
What he was doing and I kept telling him, but what he's doing, he's not doing evil things. He's not doing wicked. He's not trying to. That's not the point.
Hmm.
Okay, he may be pushing the edge of the line morally, which he does, but he's not trying to break. He's not. He's not. That's not the point. The point is, for his whole young life, he's never met anybody like the people of Odyssey.
Mm.
The people of Odyssey who are very open and who live their faith.
Mm.
He's never met anybody like that. And so now he's saying, well, I'm going to test this. And that's what he was doing throughout the whole first part of his tenure on Odyssey. He was just saying, well, I'm going to do this and let's see what happens. Let's see if they're really serious about this. Let's test this. Because it seems like it should be an easy thing for him to debunk.
Right.
Okay. I think where he was really going. This should be easy. And then it wasn't. It
Mm.
wasn't easy for him to debunk it. He would do things and then it caused people to do things, manipulate things behind the scenes. And all of a sudden, they still made the right choice. So the simple faith of these people who weren't anywhere near the same intellectual level that he was besting his intellect every single time. And
Mm.
that is an intriguing thing for him. That was what was really intriguing for him. And so then his sister came along. Bob Hoose was the one who really kind of he was shepherding the sister. She's just as intelligent as he is, just in different ways. And so then the two of them kind of started working together on different kinds of things. And so that's kind of where he was. So I thought, well, I don't want to call him Moriarty. I will call him Maury. But I said, what should his last name is Rydell, but if you pronounce it a different way, it's Riddle. So
Oh,
there's the Easter egg. There's the revelation of the Easter egg for you. He's
man.
Maury Riddle. He's a riddle. We don't know about him yet. We don't know. He's a riddle that needs to be solved. So that's who his character is. Okay. So and Whit, the reason that I know that this is a very controversial episode, the Rydell revelations, but Whit was trying to say to them, to Maury and Suzu and to Emily, who's also very extreme. She's a very bright person. That look, I understand you guys better than you think I do because you don't realize that I was you way back when, okay? And I got the freedom to be able to explore my intelligence, to be able to explore my abilities because I lived in this small town and my father, yes, I got on his nerves a lot, but I think he recognized that, you know what, this is somebody who's special. And he says, I recognize the specialness in you guys. And so I want you to have that ability too. I want you to be able to do stuff. And so the controversy, of course, was, yeah, but Emily suffered such terrible emotional trauma, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay. I look at that and say, I'm not buying it. I never really bought it, but that was going to happen. In the Harry Potter series, this happens in the book, but not in the movies. In the Harry Potter series, when they do the Triwizard Tournament, again, this is in the books, it didn't make it into the movies, but Harry has to go down and the second task is for him to go into the lake and to try to rescue people. Okay, so he goes through that whole thing, and he's got 1 hour to do it. He gets there first, and he's rescuing, and all these people are related to him that he's supposed to be rescuing. So he's, but the other ones come along and they do stuff, and you remember how it all plays out. But Harry rescues Fleur de la Cour's sister,
Mm.
okay, because she gets trapped under the water, and then he also rescues Ron,
Mm.
but in doing so, he comes in last. And this is an interesting thing about Harry Potter's character. Harry Potter's greatest strength is his love for his friends.
Mm.
Harry Potter's greatest weakness, his fatal flaw, is his love for his friends.
Mm.
It makes him do things that he doesn't really have to do. So here he is. He was first. He was going to be down there. He was going to win that part of the contest. Okay. And then he comes in last because he has to rescue them and he's fighting the mer people and all that whatnot. And he finally gets up, but he comes in last. And Ron and Hermione both are there and they're like warming him up and whatnot. He said, why did you do that? And he says, I couldn't just leave her down there. I couldn't leave the little sister down there. And they both say, Harry, you are so thick sometimes. You're at Hogwarts. Do you really think they're going to let her drown? they're not really going to let her drown. We're in Hogwarts. You were noble and wonderful, and it's great that you're noble and wonderful, and it's great that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for your friends, but you don't have to all the time. Not everything is a situation where you have to say you got to use your brain every once in a while. These contests are more than just about who's the bravest. It's also who's the smartest. Okay, I see stuff like that happening with Maury and with Suzu. Okay, how that whole thing needs to work out. And with Emily too. I really see that with Emily. It's like we're at wit's end. Whit's not going to let that was the whole point of having Whit in that episode that was so controversial, where they're locked into this room and the air is running out and all this other stuff, and Whit doesn't do anything. Okay, we're at wit's end. Do you really think Whit's going to let somebody suffocate? Really? You really think that they're going to let somebody he's going to let that happen? He knew, he was there. If he went too far, he would have stopped it. If he really thought it was going to go too far, he would have stopped it. But he didn't, because he wanted them to stop it. He wanted them to grow. And everybody was but she's so emotionally traumatized and she does this. They all seem to conveniently forget. She muscled her way in there early on. In the episode, she jumped ahead to get in there. And she manipulated Matthew to get in there too.
Right.
He was like, well, maybe we should just wait until this opens. Oh, I don't want to. No. And she jumps ahead. She jumps ahead in line. She did that with Matthew all the time, dragging him along on things that he never wanted to do.
Right.
He doesn't really want to be a part of this. He doesn't really. He's like reticent to do stuff. He's like, okay, well, I don't really. But and she's like, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And she doesn't really care about him. It's like she doesn't really care. All they care about that. Now, I don't want to besmirch Emily. I think I like Emily's character. I like her a lot. But I think that people conveniently forget that she's not this soft little pristine child that nobody. And no, come on. I mean, she has. The actress who plays her, that's what I think they're going by. The actress who plays her has it's almost an emotionally scarred voice. Almost that she plays with. She's right on the edge. She's really great. I love her completely. I love the way she plays her. But when you hear that voice, it's like you think that she's about to crumble. And she's not about to crumble at all. She's made a far sterner stuff than anybody ever thought that she's, that's just the way Emily is. And I always saw her as much harder than that. And again, don't forget, she manipulated her way into that situation. It's not like that they dragged her off the street and shoved her in there. She wanted to be the first one to be in there. She wanted to do it. So it's like, okay, well, all right. We could talk about the emotional scarring all you want to, but I'm just not buying it. A lot of the arguments that were coming back was Whit should be sued for having this, because this is such an emotionally traumatic experience for Emily. It was such a bad, horrible, traumatic experience. I say, okay, well, these rooms exist. These survival rooms, whatever they're called, they exist. They're real things. You have to solve the clues in order to be able to get out of them. And Maury just wanted to manipulate it again to see where he was at, what was going on. And so probably went farther than it was supposed to go. That particular episode probably went farther than it was supposed to go in terms of how Maury was played and how Suzu was played, in terms of Maury, the mwahaha evil Blackgaard kind of villain. That's not what he was, from my perspective, that's not what he was doing. Don't forget that the whole idea behind the theme of that episode is greater love hath no one than this, than they lay down their life for their friends. Okay. The Christian principle. That's exactly what happens in the episode. Emily says, I will sacrifice myself for Matthew. I'm willing to do that because everything is coming down. It's coming down to the point only one of us can, oxygen left for only one person. There's only one mask or whatever it is, and you get it. Okay. And that's exactly what Emily does. She lives out the Christian principle. Maury's looking at that going, will you do that? Then it got big, it got a big hyper. I don't want to rehash all that, but everybody was talking. See, a lot of people will take, and this is what was so funny. There were so many people who were on the fan sites and emails who come in and say, I don't care what the Christian principle was. He had no right to do that. I don't care what the Christian principle was. I don't care what you were trying. I don't, it's like, okay, well, if you don't care about the Christian principle, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But obviously people were really, really upset by that. And my whole thing, of course, was smiling with a bucket of popcorn.
Sorry.
And the reason why is because, and this is going to make some people mad too. That's exactly what those episodes were designed to do. The episodes were designed not to give you a pat, easy answer. The episodes were designed to get you to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
You need to know what you believe. Everybody needs to know what they believe. And early Odyssey, I don't want to say it was a mistake, but early Odyssey gave everybody the answer at the end. we come back in. They went through this really bad time. Usually the pattern that the episodes would take is they have a dilemma. Kid has a dilemma. He goes in and talks to Whit. Whit says, "Man, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Maybe you shouldn't be thinking about that." And then, but he never gets to finish. He never gets to finish because he gets called away and whatnot. And so the kid goes out and does the thing anyway and learns a bad lesson. And he comes back to Whit, and Whit's kind of like, you know what? That's what I tried to tell you at the very beginning. I had to tell you this. This is what was going to. But Whit permitted them to get into that kind of jeopardy and peril because he knew they needed to learn the lesson. The only way to do this is you got to learn the lesson on your own. We could tell you about it all you want. Well, I just wanted to take that to its natural next step in the Rydell revelations and all the stuff that's going on with the Rydells. They got to go to the next step. They got to go. We've got to be able to teach kids that look, life is not easy. If you think that this is an easy thing, it's not. You're going to be asked to make hard choices, hard decisions, and you better know how to make them. You better know. So we're going to give you examples of people who are making hard decisions. You may disagree with their decisions, but we're going to give you examples of it. Because if you're faced with that situation one day, hopefully you're prepared. Hopefully you'll go back to this and go, oh, I see what's being played out here. Because I think that's the way, I'm on a soapbox, sorry.
Don't worry.
I think that's the way Satan works. Okay, I think that we grow, if you especially if you grow up in a religious home, if you grow up in a church-centered home, you know these things. They're taught to you from a really early age. The problem is Satan is very clever and disguises the way those things come about. The testing, he disguises it. He makes the test look like if you choose the Christian version, you're wrong. The right choice is to do this. Okay, which is basically what happens where? In the Garden of Eden.
Right.
You won't die. Did he say that you'll die if you won't die? Here, you'll be like he is. Why is he trying to keep something from you? Don't you see how he's trying to be selfish? Don't you see how God is trying to be really selfish and self-centered? And Satan is really good at manipulating that in that way. So that way you think, well, the right choices must be the choice that Satan is giving me. That must be the right, because it's disguised. And then too late, you realize I've made a terrible decision. So that's why you really need to know what you believe. You really need to be able to discern and recognize the false choice you're being given. Not to get political, but this just happened in New York, okay, by a bunch of young people who said, we want free stuff, so let's elect a socialist. As the mayor. Because look at the answer that he's giving. That looks much, much more attractive than doing the hard work, than doing the right thing, doing the hard work. Oh, no. He's promising us free bus rides and free grocery stores and all this. He's going to do it. And how? He's going to tax those dirty, rotten billionaires. That's how.
The 1%, as they say.
The 1%. Yeah. Okay, well, good luck with that. I hope that it's going to crash and burn because we know it's going to crash and burn.
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
No, exactly right. Ton Stoppel. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody's going to pay for it. Well, and they're okay with saying, okay, well, then fine. The people who can afford it are going to pay for the rest. Yeah, but how do you think that those people got to be those people?
Right.
They don't stick around when they're being... they leave. And then what do you have? You have a bunch of, well, we promised this program. We've got to do something. How are we going to do it? Well, we're going to tax you now. You're just going to pay. The people who are still here are going to just have to pay. That's all there is to it. Because you want this, right? You want bus rides that are free and you want grocery stores. You want this stuff. It takes very little time for somebody who runs on a socialist platform who promises the sun, the moon, and the stars to actually turn into an authoritarian once they're elected. I mean, it takes really very little. The girl up in Seattle who just got elected mayor up there, she's a little communist socialist. And what does she do? She gets elected. She wants to do the free grocery stores and all this other stuff too. And now she's not even in office yet, but her speech is, we are not going to let the grocery store chains leave. We are going to keep them here by force if we have to. Well, she has no authority to be able to do that, but that's what she's saying. It's like, you know what? You got elected on this promise of how wonderful life is under socialism, and the first thing you do is make an authoritarian decision. It doesn't take you long, does it, to become a totalitarian under socialism? You're not even in office yet, and you're already doing it.
Yeah.
And that's my point. My point in doing all the episodes that we've been doing lately, especially, is we have got to be really, really intentional about how we are presenting dilemmas to our audience. And how do you make the right choice?
Yeah.
How do you because you're going to be faced with this over and over again, and they're disguised. They're disguised. It's not like we read, for instance, Jesus's temptations he goes off and he's tempted in the desert. And we read that and we go, oh, yeah, well, if I was faced with that, I'd do the same thing Jesus did. Like it's that easy. No, Satan's not stupid. He learned from the Son of Man. The Son of Man bested him, and of course, that's what happens. Jesus bested him in every single situation. Now, when he comes to us and does the same thing, do you think he's going to do it in the exact same ways? No. He's going to make bad choices on his part look like wonderful choices. And as a matter of
Yep.
fact, he's going to go even further and make the truth look like evil.
Yep.
Right.
If you choose that, you're evil.
Hmm.
And we see this, like with the abortion argument, we see this all the time. You're evil for not wanting women to murder their babies in their womb. You're evil.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Did you just miss the part about murdering babies in the womb?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, this is the thing. I don't know. I'm gonna,
No,
like I said,
keep
I'm on a
going.
soapbox. I'm ranting and raving. But to bring this point home, the idea behind this is that that's what we want to be able to do is present these things in a way that young minds can understand them, so that that way, when they're faced with it as they grow older, they can go back and go, "What happened in Odyssey? Wait a minute. This sounds familiar. What
Right.
happened in Odyssey?
Yeah.
Oh, they did that." That's what they did. That's why that happened. That's why that episode was even there. Oh, I see. I get it now. And then hopefully that will help them to turn to the
Mm.
right place and make the right choices.
I think you're spot on. I mean, we even see, even when Jesus was teaching, it was controversial to the Pharisees and Sadducees, right?
Exactly.
And they
Exactly.
just kept on pondering upon it and thinking about it. And this is one of my favorite things about the controversial episodes, just in general, is that same exact thing. I mean, there's plenty of people who will write letters just as they wrote to you, and you're like, well, that means that that episode worked. That means that
Yeah.
episode did what it's supposed to. And
Did exactly what it's supposed to do. You're talking about it, which is
great
exactly
feeling.
what you're supposed to do. You know,
Always a good feeling, I feel like.
I have no doubt that my episodes are not the most popular episodes.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm perfectly willing to accept that because I do things like this. I love the ones that are just fluff, entertainment fluff and all that sort of stuff, and even the adventure ones that are really way out there and doing stuff. And I'm sure that's great. I love that. I've written many of them myself.
Mhm.
But now I'm like, okay, that's not enough. That's not enough. That we can't just show these things and live in a fantasy world. We've got to show hard choices.
Hmm.
Something is going on here, and you have to make. I think the whole storyline of Jules is going to is, and I don't know where we are in the release of anything, so I don't want to give anything away. All of the stuff that led up to this is her having to make really hard choices. What are the hard choices? And so far, maybe she's made a lot of bad ones, and we're seeing the consequences of them. So, I want to put all of our characters through the ringer that way. And Maury was a convenient vehicle for this because I don't want him to be evil. He's now trying to do good things. He's now seeing the error of his ways. He's now seeing how this stuff that he's been so flippant about in his intellect. He had two really good episodes that I thought were really telling for Maury. One was Value in the Process, where Whit's not letting him go to school. He wants him to stay in middle school instead of taking college courses. And Maury just is like, fluff, blah, 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 until he has that moment where something happens with him and Trey. He thought he was so arrogant about everything, and it ends up that's not the case at all. That was the first one. And then the second one was his whole thing with Marion. That whole episode, the two-parter or three-part or whatever it was, he realized his flippancy way back when causes a lot of problems. Just because you're the smartest person in the room doesn't mean that you should do what you want to do all the time. It means that you need to be able to step back and say, I have to be smarter than myself.
Mm.
See, this is where young Whit comes into play too, but he's the same way. And we're watching young Whit do is grow up in a Christian home where things like the Apostle Paul's letter to the Corinthians or wherever it was, where he said, look, the weaker brother, you who are smarter and stronger need to accommodate the weaker brother. So sure, you can eat meat. Sure, you can eat whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Absolutely. You're free in Christ. You can do that. But if it's going to cause them to stumble, you need to be smarter than yourself and go ahead and accommodate the other person, sacrifice your wants and your needs, because your life is not about you. Your life is about somebody else. Your life is about others, serving others. So that's what I get really passionate about that. Those are the kinds of stories that I really like to tell, and I really like to see things like that illustrated. And those are the stories also, quite frankly, that I enjoy watching.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy seeing episodes about it. When you try to rearrange your brain to see things like that in stories, it doesn't really matter how bad the rest of the story is. If you can get one really kernel, one nugget, one great illustration of one of these principles, then I'm like, I'll take that. I'll take that out and I'll use that someplace else. I use it as an example when I teach, or I'll use it as, yeah, this movie was horrible, but one thing happened in this movie that was so spectacular and so wonderful and such a great illustration of Christian principles. I got to show you. I got to show it to you. It's this right here. That's something that you should be able to do. That goes back to these historical things, the little historical moments in screenplays where you come across something and it's like, oh yeah, this is great. Look, isn't that wonderful? Same thing for that. When you come across a nugget of truth, goodness, or beauty, it doesn't matter how bad the rest of it is. Take the good nugget out and use it. Use it
Mm.
in your life. Put it in your quiver, and that way you've got it. It's there. You can go, okay, you know what? Popular culture is the way we maneuver through life. Song lyrics are great on this. When you come across a song lyric that just goes, wow, it really hits you. You tuck that thing away. And then you realize, oh, when I'm in a moment of despair, or when I'm in a moment of this, whatever crisis or whatever, I can pull that out and I can go, yep, there it is right there. That's good. That leads me to a better place. That leads me to think better. Anyway, that's my philosophy.
I felt the instinct to clap right after you finished. Okay, going off more on the Rydell's. So the 1000th episode of Odyssey, not the live show, but the 1000th episode. This is
Right.
a very specific question. So the episode Crisscrossed, is that at all inspired by Strangers on a Train by
Of
Alfred?
course. Of course.
I just watched it.
Yes,
I was
yes, it
just
is.
like,
It absolutely is. As a matter of fact, Suzu even says that. When Suzu in the episode, she's like being ostracized because she did something that caused part of this to happen with Emily. And I'm being vague because I don't want to give away the episode, but then she says she's like keeping her distance until she says she comes over because they're putting together all the clues, and she says, "I was watching these old movies of Mr. Whitaker's, and there's this movie where this happens. Somebody does something else for somebody else, and it's like maybe that's what's going on here." Okay, so she doesn't say it by name, and one of the reasons why is because that that can trigger a certain segment of our Whit is watching these kinds of movies about murder.
yeah. Watching Alfred Hitchcock.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whit is watching classic movies? Wait a minute. But at any rate, that aside, and I don't want to make fun of those people. I understand their convictions. But she does say that. She does do that. So the idea behind it is, oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. It helps us. It helps us. And that goes back to what I was just mentioning before, which is this is the good nugget. If we can see the manipulation and how it works, if we can understand how that stuff happens, we see how Satan starts working and how to counter it. What do you do now? What do you do if you're in this kind of situation? It's not going to be exactly the same kind of situation because it wasn't for Maury. What do you do? And what I really loved about that episode is that they figured it out and they went and confronted the people, and the people still said, nah, you got nothing. And they're like, now, wait a minute, that's it? I thought we were supposed to be able to, like, that's it? That's what I love about that. There's a great episode, there's a great line from Captain Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation where Data is, the Enterprise is going against, they're doing this kind of war games thing with another ship. And there's a species of humanoids who are experts at strategy. They're very, very arrogant about it. And they're observing this whole situation. So they're observing how this all plays out. And so somebody on the ship doesn't like these people. They think they're so arrogant that they need to be taught a lesson. So there's this game that they play, this all about strategy, strategium or something like that they're all supposed to play. And so they say, let's get Data to do it because he's a machine. He can't lose. And so this guy plays Data, and Data loses. In fact, he loses handily. He loses like within like 5 or 6 moves, he's done. And everybody's like, but you can't lose. You're a machine. You're a computer, basically. You can't lose. How can you lose? You know, and Data's like, yeah, how can I? It's a conundrum for him. And so he sequesters himself. He thinks there must be something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my programming. There's something wrong with me. There must be something wrong. Well, meanwhile, Picard, Data is the acting first officer in these war games, and Picard needs him. So he's like, where's Data? And he said, well, he's taken himself off duty. He's in his quarters. And so Picard goes down to his quarters and he like reams him out. He goes, what are you doing? He goes, and Data says, I can't trust that I'm giving you the correct responses because I lost this game. And I think there's something wrong with my program. And I haven't been able to determine exactly what's wrong with my program. And Picard says, don't be stupid. That's not the way things work. And he said, I need you. Can you form a theory? Can you form a stratagem? Can you do? Yes, sir, I can. Then good. Leave your self-doubts in your quarters and come with me. I expect to see you on the bridge. And then he turns around and he walks out and he stops at the door and he says, and Mr. Data, it is absolutely possible to do everything right and still lose.
Yep.
Hmm.
And I look at that and go, there's one of those nuggets. Boom. Pop that out. Stick that in there. It is absolutely possible to do everything right and still lose. He says, that's not a flaw. That's just life.
Yep.
That's just the way it works.
Man.
So that's the kind of stuff that I look at and say, that's wisdom that you can take with you no matter where you go, no matter what's going on. You've done everything right. You still lost. Now, what do you do about it? How does that work? Okay. Jesus did everything right and was still crucified. He never made a mistake at all. He never sinned at all. He was perfect and he was still crucified. That's the plan. It's baked into the system.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the sooner we learn that, the better off we're going to be.
Now I'm gonna be like re-listening to this over and over again. And every time it's just gonna hit me right between the eyes. So, advice for mysteries and building mystery and intrigue into your story.
Okay, so those are two separate categories.
Mm,
There's a genre called mysteries, and they're written in a certain way.
mhm.
Then there's adding mystery and suspense to your own story, which every story should do. It's the hook that gets you into the next scene. You want to
Yeah.
create the dilemma to get you into the next scene. So how do you do that? Well, you have to know what your story is.
Mhm.
Mm,
So for mysteries, there's libraries filled with books that tell you how to plot a mystery and how all that sort of stuff works. I don't want to necessarily go into all of that, but I found it helpful in the mysteries that I've written. Again, know what the upshot is. You got to know what the resolution of the mystery is to be able to write the mystery. You kind of have to
mm,
write mysteries backwards.
Mhm.
So you say, here's the big reveal. This is going to be how the mystery is solved. So let's go backwards and see now what do I need to do in order to make that come about. And then it also helps to plot a mystery. The beginning of a mystery always has to be a huge conundrum,
Mhm.
something that seems completely improbable, something that seems, well, how did this happen? On television, it's always murders. A murder happens, and now we got to unravel who does what, who did what, and whatnot. But for less graphic mysteries, a theft or things like that, or some mysteries that kids would solve, you got to come up with a conundrum. I always loved the little 2-minute mysteries or whatever they were, where you had a
mm,
detective
mhm,
he had a super smart person, and there are a whole bunch of different ones. Encyclopedia Brown was one of the ones that I read when I
Mhm.
was a kid. But it would always be he would come upon a scene, and so the explanation of a scene, as everything is being explained, the hook was you're lying, and I know why you're lying because. And then the little tagline underneath was, "Do you know why? Did you pick up on why this person? Why does Encyclopedia Brown actually think that that person is guilty?" The answer on page 402. So you have to turn back
yep.
to
Yeah.
which is part of the fun of it. But that's a really good way to show you how to plot a mystery and what kinds of things should happen in the middle of a mystery. So usually, for instance, it's on detective, whoever it is, has to be super smart or has to have a big knowledge base. So
Mm.
good plots are always things that are right in front of you, but you don't notice them.
Mhm.
For the audience, it's right in front of you, but you don't notice it
Mhm.
until later when somebody says, "Wait a minute, how did this happen? Wait, oh, that you remember that? Oh, that's why." And then it unravels, and then you can go in and actually have the detective moment where the detective says, "And we're going to gather everybody into the drawing room, and I'm going to explain why this person and this person and this person is, the classic murder mystery ending." Who the real culprit is. As far as adding mystery and intrigue to your stories, though, to
Mhm.
just a regular story. Well, again, know your story, outline it, know your story, and then say, okay, what I try to do in that situation is say, okay, I don't want to give the audience the answer. I want to withhold the answer so they have to listen to the next scene in order to get the answer.
Mm,
Mhm.
Or they have to listen throughout the rest of it in order to get the answer like 3 scenes later. We'll pick up with that. So, like with Crisscross, I knew I was going to have two separate plots going here at the same time because that's the nature of the story. So, who are my detectives? Okay, we've got all the team is basically there. They're the detectives. How do they know each other? What happens with it when they know each other? How do they come together? Well, they came together at this art gallery, and there's a plausible reason for why Cooper was there and for why Susan was there. Now they're doing what they need to do, and then there's this big crime that happens. There's a commotion or something that happens, and ooh, oh, isn't that? And then the next scene is, oh, a crime was committed.
Mhm.
Well, we were there. Wow, that place had a crime committed. Wow, we were there. I wonder why. And so now we have to unravel why, who could have possibly committed that crime, how that could have happened. What makes them harder nowadays is all of the technology that's available
mm,
because
Right.
there's a camera on every corner. Everybody
mhm,
has a camera in their cell phone. Everybody has, all licensed. There's trackers in cars, so anybody can track anybody anywhere, and they don't have to do the legwork anymore that they used to have to do. So you have to make the plot twists of a nature that can't be overcome by technology. You have to have
mm,
them go and search for it. They have to go themselves to talk to this person and search for the clue. So they have to do the actual legwork, which I think is just better anyway. But it just
mhm,
complicates how you tell the stories because then you have to say, well, why didn't the security cameras pick up on this? Why couldn't we track the person with their cell phone? This has gotten really hard with the advent of cell phones because even with Odyssey, it's like, well, how come Whit just didn't pick up a cell phone and talk to that person? Well, okay, now you have to come up with the reason why his battery was dead or he left his cell phone at home or he dropped it or blah 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 blah. There has to be some plausible reason why he couldn't have just called somebody on the cell phone. I think in the Maury and Marion story, that was a problem there because Maury and Emily, they were getting tied up, I think, by that bad guy. And Whit was saying, I've been trying to call you all day. I mean, when they finally got loose, they finally got free, they were able to call Whit or something. He said, I've been trying to call you, and oh, my battery's dead. So you have to set that up. And the thing about it is, you can use the same excuses because that's a plausible excuse. I used too much of my battery, but my phone died, okay? Or my phone got lost. But if you're going to use things like my battery died, you have to set that up early so it really does make sense. You can't just say, uh-oh, all of a sudden my battery died. That's a convenient thing.
Yeah.
So make sure you set up those plot twists early. The possibility of a plot twist happens in the first scene, and then the plot twist actually takes place. The reasoning why you couldn't do something or you had to do something plays out in the next couple of scenes. And that way people aren't going, well, that was convenient. In a mystery, you don't want anybody to ever say, oh, isn't that convenient? All of a sudden, the bad guy shows up. All of a sudden, this thing happens. All of a sudden, in really good mysteries, the bad guy, the guilty party is in the first scene. And the best ones that I like is the least likely person that you would expect in that. Like a magician, it's all misdirection. So, let's set this up. That person's obviously guilty, right? No, that person's not guilty at all. That's this person over here. Yeah. So as far as your regular stories, though, you should always try to hook people. You always want to hook at the end of your scene. You never want to leave a scene with something answered. I want to say never. Most of the time, you still want people to be hooked into listening to the next scene, whatever the next scene is. There are some times when you just want a comical ending, which is what Connie and Eugene used to do. Let's just get the last word in. Who can get the last word in? The last word, the last sound, the last whatever, the last time. And Jungle Jam used to have a lot of just comical scene endings where we would walk off with, it was a laugh. See, whatever is going to keep you listening, that's the thing. Whatever's going to keep you listening and stay with the story to the next thing, that's what you want to do. You always want to do that.
This is a bit of a transition from, because we're talking about all these serious audio episodes. So now I'm going to ask you, a staple in my family, or like a show that we loved, was Little Dogs on the Prairie.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the story behind Little Dogs on the Prairie? You
Okay,
played
so
Patterson.
yeah, Patterson. I played Patterson and the sheriff and Hollister McCollister,
Oh,
and the sheriff. And I was going to play Sport.
really?
Yeah, but my voice was way too deep for Sport. So I could play a lot of characters, but that one was like I can't play. I don't think I can play. I don't think I can convincingly play a kid. Unlike Nathan Carlson, who played Scout. And so he had more of a range than I have as far as that's concerned. So, but we had a lot of fun with those. That was part of Fancy Monkey, which was Jungle Jam, and then the Jungle Jam, the Razzle Flavins, and then we did Little Dogs. We were trying to, we wanted to do an animated series, and at that point, we were able to work out a deal with, I think it was Tommy Nelson or maybe it was Word Kids. I don't remember what it was. Got the funding and got everything done, and this is another one of my pet peeves, and that is it's show business, and business often sabotages show. Okay. So the business part of it was not pleasant for me. And that goes for everything that I do, including Odyssey. And everybody has their personalities, everybody has their way of being, everybody's created differently. I have an artistic temperament, and my artistic temperament does not always mesh well with business. And I know that about myself, which is why I don't work for a corporation and haven't worked for a corporation for years. Focus on the Family was the last corporation I ever worked for. And that was I stopped being on staff at Focus on the Family in like 2000, year 2000, I think it was. Actually like 1990 when I stopped being on staff at Focus. At any rate, business always seems to get the upper hand on creativity. That's a sad fact, but that's the way it has always been. That's the way it probably always will be. We wanted to make more. It just didn't work out. Had a blast making them when we made them. They were fun and funny. Jungle Jam, Razzle Flabbins, Little Dogs, all of that stuff was probably the most fun I've ever had working on any project. It was just so much fun to do because we got to do these silly voices, doing these silly stories that all had a great point. They were funny. We were charting new avenues of humor. We still have one that I point to with pride called the Talk in a Bucket ending, which was one of the endings of an episode was where Gruffy Bear, we were trying to make the point, there was this big conflict between all the characters, and the animals were just like really at each other's throats, and then Gruffy Bear picked up a bucket for some reason and said something, and it echoed out of the bucket, and it's like, oh, yeah. And then one of the other characters was like, we need to be doing this, this, and this, and he says, never mind that. Listen to what my voice sounds like when I talk in a bucket. And that's the way we ended the show. It's like the Talk in a Bucket ending. We call it a Talk in a a bucket ending. And then everybody picked up buckets and started talking, and then all the characters were talking in a bucket. It's like, oh, we're having a great time now. Look, we're talking in a bucket, and all the things that they did before were forgotten completely. All the conflict is gone. So I love the talking a bucket ending. My favorite episode was the clunking episode. I don't know if you remember the clunking episodes, the coconut clunking, great coconut clunking debate, which was all a metaphor for smoking and drugs. Don't use drugs, don't smoke. This is what will happen if you do. It's like hitting yourself on the head with a coconut. So just don't do that. And that just played out so well. We just had a blast. We laughed so much during the writing and the recording phases of those shows. We just did nothing but laugh. And there were some of my fondest memories. We'd meet. Those two guys lived all the way across town. I lived on the east side. They lived on the west side. So we have to meet somewhere in the middle. And we always met in restaurants, and we always just closed down the place because we were laughing and talking and writing and laughing and talking and writing so much. And it was night after night. We had these. We met for Chinese. We love Chinese food, and so we would eat, and then we pull out our little computers and start typing and typing and typing and laughing and talking, and it was just a riot. And Little Dogs then came out of that. Little Dogs was the next step to do that. We would love to have done a Jungle Jam animation series, but again, there were business concerns. There were certain things that were going on. And so we said, well, let's just create a brand new series. And Jeff Parker was the one who said, hey, what about prairie dogs? What he did was I was watching this documentary about how you get rid of prairie dogs, how there's a company that does this, where they will go into a field that's infested with prairie dogs, and it's a farming community, and they want to get rid of them. And they have what is essentially a giant vacuum cleaner. And so they go over to a prairie dog burrow, and they'll put this thing over the burrow, and they turn it on, and the suction just sucks all the prairie dogs out of the ground. And so he said, at first I was like, this looks really awful, looks terrible. But he said they showed the prairie dogs, and they were like, can we do it again? They were like, the prairie dogs were just so happy. They thought, this is the best thing ever. Wow, can we get sucked out of the ground again? This is so much fun. They were just delighted. And so he said, I think prairie dogs should be our next thing. And we were all like, okay, that's great. And so we started. Jeff's wife was an illustrator, and so she made some early illustrations of what the prairie dogs might look like. And we were over at his house, and I went into the bedroom, and I said, okay, here's what I started recording on my phone. Well, here's one voice. Here's so Hollister McHollister. And I started doing that. And then I think the sheriff should talk like that, and he should be an old and then Patterson was sort of like Walter Brennan. Patterson, he talked like that. Yep. And you came out and said, well, let's talk that. All of those characters, Patterson, Hollister, and Gilroy, were named for towns in Northern California.
Oh.
So Jeff Parker came from Northern California. He used to drive through those little places where, he was driving around the countryside. He'd come across Hollister, Patterson, and Gilmore and Gilroy, and he'd come across them, and those would be great names for characters. And we had Miss Katay, and Gray Delisle played her. She was a lot of fun too. Again, we had Scout and Sport, and Nathan played Gilroy, and then we had a couple of actresses come in, and it ended up being Debbie Derryberry, who did the voice of Scout. And then we had Dixie too. We had a character named Dixie. So I don't remember who did what. We had a couple of characters. I don't remember which one was which. I know Debbie Derryberry was part of it. I know Gray Delisle was part of it too, but I don't remember who played Scout. The lovely thing about that was that whatever we wanted to do, we could do. We didn't have anybody else telling us you can't do that. And whatever we could do, we would do. So if you could do a convincing Obi-Wan, which is what I did in one of the episodes, use some force to open this door, stuff like that. Yeah. Whatever made us laugh was what went into the script and the stories. And it was really fascinating to me because I kind of remembered that very first episode that we did, which was about the snake singing opera, which in and of itself is just a ridiculous concept. But It took a real sad turn at the end, because they were so prejudiced against him that he ended up going on his own way. And it was really, really sad. I saw a review online of the Little Dogs. This is years after we hadn't done any more. It was like maybe 20 years later. Somebody was rediscovering them. They were going through, and they said, there's this series called Little Dogs in the Prairie, and I've never even heard of it before. It's been out, but I saw this tape. And he said, the first episode is about this snake named Stanza, who comes into this town filled with prairie dogs, and he sings. He's beautiful opera singer, beautiful, but they can't overcome their prejudice, and he ends up going away. And he says it's funny, and then really tragic at the end, like really down turn at the end. And he said that was mind blowing because that was nothing like I had never seen anything like that in any kind of like Christian stuff at all. He was reviewing a lot of Christian animation that had come and gone. So there's nothing like this. And he said, if you ever get a chance, you got to see this thing because it's so incredible. And I was like, wow, I do remember that we wanted to take that twist. We wanted to make that twist, be more sad and wistful at the very end. But I didn't think it would have that kind of an impact on people. You never can tell. You never know. But Little Dogs was great. It's so much fun, and Jungle Jam was great. It's so much fun. We just had a blast doing it.
What would you say was your favorite of the series? Would it be Stanza by Me, or would it be
Yeah, probably. I think that's probably. I do like the one where they all got haircuts. They all got.
Some call it acute narcissism. I call it perfect hair forever. Yay!
Uh, I'm just remembering how silly those haircuts were. None of them were for guys. All of the haircuts were for girls. They were all women's haircuts. They were all for young girls. I mean, the sheriff had that little, page boy haircut. Like what in the world? In video, in animation, this is the other thing in animation. At one point, somebody rides into town. One of the prairie dogs rides into town on the back of a horse.
Mhm.
And I said, well, should we have horses that are prairie dog size horses, or should it be like a real live big horse? And no, I think it should be a real live big horse. I mean, so we had this tiny little prairie dog riding on this super big horse and coming in, and it's like, well, okay, I guess that makes sense. We've kind of left the world of reality. I like the Stanza episode because it has one of my favorite Hollister moments where Hollister is everybody's so prejudiced and Hollister is really scolding them all for being so prejudiced. But Hollister was making money hand over fist, And what's the line? Oh, it's this great line where he goes,
Is it I hope you're happy? I know I am.
I hope you're happy. I know I am.
Uh,
And that was just an ad lib. We really wanted to make the point go home. He was really scolding the prairie dogs. He was really saying, look, you don't understand what you've done here. He was just trying to help. He was trying to be good. There was nothing wrong with him. And we've all driven him out of town. And I hope you're all happy. I know I am. Because he's counting the money. See, that was what was great about this. We could do what if you had a company that was behind you, they would have standards and practices fit. They would not let that happen. But when you were doing them on your own, it was like there was an episode of Jungle Jam too, where Millard the monkey had us based on an old fable where he was trying to trade up. He had this one thing and he was trading up to the next best thing and then trading that for something better and trading that for something better. And his greed finally led him he ended up trading everything for an old stick that somebody told him was like magical. So he just has this stick. And then everybody tells him, Millard, that's the stick. It's nothing. There's nothing better or good or magical about it. And Millard's like, you're wrong. You're right. I know. And then he realizes he's been had completely. And as he's walking away, he stumbles and falls into a vacant well. And the stick wedges itself to the point where he's on top of the stick, so he's not down at the bottom of the well. He's just wedged in the well. And so we were writing, we've been in the middle of the writing session, and Miller's now expounding on the lesson of this, which is, I did this and this and this and this and everything, and I needed to learn to be grateful for everything I have, just like I'm grateful for this stick. Okay. And then in the writing, when we were writing, I went, ah! And he went, and everybody just fell over. They thought it was hilarious. It's right at that moment where he learns the lesson. I'm grateful for this stick, and then the stick breaks, and of course he goes ahead and falls into the well. That's the thing about those things. We were able to do stuff like that all the time. Just take it one step further, take it one step further, take it one step further. We got a lot of feedback from people who were so envious of us because they were all doing stuff for companies, and the companies would never let them do that stuff. And they were like, "How do you guys get away with that?" And I said, "Well, we're not tied to a company. That's why we are our own company. We can kind of do what we want with this stuff and get away with it." First they came for the squirrels, and I said nothing because I was not a squirrel. And then they came for the aardvarks, and I said nothing because I was not an aardvark. I mean, that's another that's a very famous quote about, first they came for the trade unionists and I said nothing because I was not a trade. It was about the Nazis coming for people. And so I said, when I was writing that script, I said, well, we should throw that in there, it's silencing everybody. They're trying to silence everybody. First they came for the squirrels and I said nothing because I was not a squirrel. And then they came for the aardvarks and I said nothing because I was an aardvark. I was not an aardvark. And then they came for the elephants and I said nothing because I was not an elephant. And now they're coming for me. And who's going to stand up for me? And then there's crickets. Oh, come on, guys, stand up for me. Crickets, stuff. We could get away with that, and that was what made Jungle Jam so much fun, and Little Dogs so much fun. We got away with a lot of stuff in Little Dogs too. I remember one thing where they did somebody get into a rocket and go to like outer space. There was somebody. Oh, somebody was taken over for the school teacher. There was a school marm, and there was an old school marm, and she went out and kind of tipped over into a
Yes.
rocket, and it takes off a rocket in the old West that Prairie Dogs was like.
Yeah.
It was like the most surreal, insane, hilarious stuff. It's really funny. I wish we had been able to do more, and I wish that they were out there more. Yeah, everybody can go get them, by the way. It's there at fancymonkey.com. You can get all of the stuff still at fancymonkey.com. And I really wish that we could get it all out there because I think it's a lot of fun, unlike anything else. And the music was just so good.
Mm.
Buddy and Julie Miller were the main composers for it and made singers. And Nathan is a great. He and I did Carl and Olaf, and we did the singing voices for Carl and Olaf and all the other stuff. And the music was just so good.
So we have the sad ending of Stanza by Me.
Mhm.
How can you choose whether to have a happy ending or a sad ending?
It's best to know where you're going to go when you first start. It's like baking a cake. You can throw a bunch of stuff into a bowl and then pour it into a pan, but that doesn't make it a cake. You really need to know that you're trying to bake a cake. And so what do I need to make this cake? Now, having said that, good stories, well written, I think well written stories, good stories tend to take on a life of their own.
Mhm.
And when you find yourself fighting your story because you really wanted to do this thing and the story really wants to go in another direction, you should listen to
Mm.
your story.
Mm.
Because badly written stories are stories where plot twists happen because the writer needs them to happen, not because they rise organically out of the needs of the story. You want your plot twists, you want you want the things that are going to happen to be very organic, keeping with the nature of the story. There are a whole bunch of Harlan Coben novels out there, and he's a novelist out there who writes these thrillers, and they made them into film. They made them into like limited television series now. There are a whole bunch of them out there. For him, I watch these things and go, oh, all of this stuff is happening because he wants it to happen, not because the story needs it to happen.
Mm.
You want the story to need it to happen. You want the story, it arises out of the needs of the story, not out of the needs of the author. The author is just a vehicle to get the story out there. So, and you can tell that within yourself. I can really, when I'm fighting the story, I want you to be this, and the story wants to be something else. It's like it lets you know, and it's very frustrating, and it's very like, ah. So I don't know if you guys have gone to college. I don't know if you've taken college courses or whatnot, but if you've ever written a thesis paper, it's the same kind of thing. When you start a thesis paper, you come up with a thesis. I want to examine this, 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 and this. That's the first thing that everybody asks for. All the professors ask for you to give your thesis statement, okay? And then now I got to go do the research. And a good professor, and this is what I always told my students, your thesis is not written in stone. Your thesis has to be malleable because
Mm.
if you're trying to just prove a thesis that you want, all that is proof text. You're going to have to go find things that are going to prove your thesis, which means that you're just setting up a straw man argument most of the time. So the idea behind it is, no, go where the research takes you.
Mm.
Even if it means you have to change your thesis, even if it means that you may say, my thesis was completely wrong, the exact opposite of what I thought. And so you have to change your thesis because the research, I'm being fair with the research, I'm trying to be as fair and balanced with the research as I can, says, what I thought was completely not true. The opposite is true. So I have to change my thesis now. And that's okay. That's the way it should be. Same thing for script writing. You can start out with a theme. You can even start out with, this is where I want to go. But as you're going along, as you're doing research and as you're doing writing and as you're developing characters and you're developing their relationships and you're developing all of the ins and outs of what you have to do in order to tell the story to build to that climax, you may realize that's not the right climax. That's not the right theme. This story doesn't want to be that story. The
Mhm.
story wants to be something else. And because of that, you need to be willing to say, okay, nothing is written in stone here. This is better if the story goes this way. And it can go both ways. So you can actually have a story where you think it's going to be something that's really sad. You're going to have a sad ending, and it just doesn't want to be a sad ending. The point that you're trying to make is made better with a happy ending, talk in a bucket ending. On the other hand, you may have something that you think is hilarious, and you're just doing nothing but writing, hilarious, joke after joke after joke. And then you realize at a certain point, this is not going to end well. I want it to end like this. I want it to end like this. This is this, but it didn't. It doesn't end well. So at any rate, that's that. Go with the needs of your story. Be willing to say, well, okay, this is not going to end up like I thought it was going to end up. I learned this pretty early on in Odyssey in the episode The Tangled Web. I was writing it and I thought I knew where it was going to go. So, this kid does this thing and it's a story and blah, 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 blah. And when it gets to the climax of that kid, I was writing it. This was back when writing the script the night before we were recording it the next day. We'd already, everything was, we were that close. So I'm writing. I get to a certain point and I go, when that kid stands up and he's supposed to go to the microphone and talk, and you think he's gonna confess everything, and he doesn't. He doesn't confess his. I said, what would happen? And that was exactly what happened. It doesn't feel right for him to confess everything. It feels right for him to actually take this thing and go sit down, and nobody's the wiser that he lied. He's lied through his teeth to get this honor. And I was like, it shocked me. I'm like, wow. So it always depends on the needs of the story. If you're forcing something, and you'll know it because you're fighting. Your story is fighting you. You're fighting your story. Now that doesn't mean you can't go off on rabbit trails in your story. That's perfectly fine. Go, explore something, see where it goes. If something is really going in a certain direction, and okay, well, if you got time, let's explore that direction. Let's go for it. Let's see where it's going. A lot of times it's going to end up a dead end. And so you got to go back to where your original story was and say, okay, no, we're not going in that direction. We got to go in this direction. It doesn't mean that you don't guide your story, but you got to listen to your story. You've got to really be attuned with what your story is and how it's unfolding. And don't ignore that. Don't ignore that. Don't try to say, well, that's fine, but I'm not doing that. I want to do this.
Phil, thank you so much.
You're welcome. We can still do we can do this again, even again. I'm always open. Always
Oh
open.
my
So
God.
whenever you guys want to talk, let's talk.